The following is a summary of the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Devarim, Shabbos Chazon, Tov Shin Nun. Shabbos Chazon, we know it says that on this Shabbos, everybody is shown a machazeh, a vision of the Bayis Hashlishi. L'choira, that idea is the complete opposite of the simple meaning of the Haftorah Chazon Yeshayahu, which the Haftorah is Heipach HaNechama. It's the opposite of consolation. It's the Tolosa de Puranusa, it's the 3 weeks of punishment. And this, the idea of showing a vision of the third Beis HaMikdash, is Shleimus HaNechama. That's the complete perfection of consolation. Or to put it slightly differently, if there needed to be this consolation of seeing the vision of the third Beis HaMikdash, it should have been shown in the Shiva de Nechemta, in the 7 weeks of consolation that follow the 3 weeks between Shivasa B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Then, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Menachem de B'nai Yisrael, then there should be the Machzeh of the Bayis Hashlishi. Why Davka is this vision on the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av? We'll be able to understand this with the general rule that every Yerida descent is L'tzorech Aliyah, is for the purpose of an ascent. Hashem is good, and the nature of good is to be good. And there cannot be in Hashem's world a descent just for the purpose of a descent. Every descent must be for the purpose of good, of an ascent. And therefore the mohus, the whole being of descent, is the ascent, and the descent is a stage in the ascent. And that's why this machzeh, this vision of the third Beis HaMikdash, is the beginning of the ascent within the descent. However, we still need to understand that a little bit deeper. The truth is, the descent and the ascent are opposites. It's just that Hashem puts in the order of things the descent before the ascent. Why must, however, the descent be a stage in the ascent? Why did Hashem make it in such a way that in order to have such an aliyah, it needed to be preceded by a Yerida, and such a Yerida, the Churban, the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? We'll understand this by understanding the connection between Chazon and the Parshas HaShavua, Parshas Devarim. Eile HaDevarim, Mishnah Torah. The last Sefer of the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu repeats Ba'ofen in a way of Eile HaDevarim. It's these words. It's as if Moshe is pointing with his finger and showing this. These are the words. Today they were given to you. Every single day they should be in your eyes as completely new. Now, this is emphasized in the bracha we say over the Torah, Baruch Atah Hashem, Noisein HaTorah, a present participle, because every single day a person is born anew, and therefore there needs to be the receiving and giving of the Torah anew every single day. Again, one can ask the question, Lama asa Hashem kacha? Why did Hashem make it in such a way that every single day there needs to be a new giving of the Torah and a new receiving of the Torah, which is interrupted by one sleep? And since we have a rule that Ani nevresi l'shamesh eskoini, that I am created to serve Hashem, why was a person created in such a way that there needed to be an interruption of sleep? The Rambam says even to 8 hours of sleep. In other words, there needs to be an interruption of many hours in the fulfillment of a person's tachlis. Why? Chazal said that when a person is sleeping, their neshama receives nourishment from the higher worlds. That's a seder which Hashem fixed in the Bria. The question is, why did he fix it in such a way? Hashem would and could have created a world in which we would be able to recharge whilst we're still awake. Why did he do it through a system of where every single day we have to go to sleep and be born anew? The answer is that the whole tachlis of a person is that they should bring an elevation and a perfection to the entire creation. And although at the beginning of Bereshit it says, Vayar Elokim ki tov, Hashem saw that the creation was good, nevertheless it says, Asher bara Elokim lasos, that Hashem created to do, to fix, meaning that there needs to be a partnership with man, that there be a chidush, a novelty in the Bria precipitated by the avodah of human beings. Now this chidush is achieved through Torah and mitzvahs, and that brings an entire elevation in the nature of the world, or in the words of the Medrash, tachtoinim yalol elyonim, that the lowers ascends to the higher. And similarly, in a person's avodah every single day, after a person has, by nature, achieved a certain level in their avodas Hashem, they need to add on to that. There needs to be a chidush. That's, as explained in Tanya, the difference between an oved Elokim, a servant of God, and lo avodah, one who hasn't served him. As explained there in Tanya, the difference between somebody who learns something 100 times and 101 times. And the whole point is l'shanes teva haragilos, to change the nature of habit. And this is emphasized when a person is born anew after sleep. If their avodah was continual, without any interruption whatsoever, it would not be noticeable the chidush, the novelty in a person's avodah, because what one would see would just be a continuum, a hemshech echad. And therefore, sleep interrupts that continuum, and one sees a new day, a hemshech, a chidush in their avodah. And since chidush, novelty, necessitates a previous interruption, therefore a chelek, a part of a person's avodah is, a part of their l'shamesh eskoinai, serving Hashem, is the chidush, and therefore there needs to be the hefsek, the sleep, before the chidush. And that's also the reason of the yerida that comes before the aliyah. If a person's avodah would be just one continuum of aliyah of malin b'kodesh, then the chidush in the aliyah would not be noticeable. Masha enkein, when there is an interruption in the aliyah through a yerida, there is more emphasized the novelty in the aliyah. And as far as the aliyah is concerned, the aliyah is a much greater and superb aliyah when it's preceded by this yerida. And the same is true on Torah, that Torah has to be renewed every single day, and in reference to Chidushei Torah, which, in addition to the fact that the halacha is fixed according to the ruling of people down here in this world, the Tachtoinim, the ribui, the tremendous outpouring of Torah has specifically come at a time of Golus. So, for example, the Talmud comes after the brevity of the Mishnah, and then you have the Rishonim and the Acharonim. According to the descent, the darkness is emphasized, the chidush, the novelty in Torah. The Nakuda, the point is as follows. In a situation of light and ascent, continual ascent, then the chidush of a person's avodah b'koyach atzmai, avodah on their own steam, is not so noticeable, because one may presume that the aliyah in a person's avodah is because they are in a situation of light. However, it is unknown what their avodah would be if in a situation of darkness. However, after the yerida, after the descent, and nevertheless a person is not put off and a person is not nispoil from the choshech, then there is revealed the chidush of avodah b'koyach atzmei, the avodah of a person's avodah by themselves, until it becomes fixed in their avodah. So now we can understand the whole concept of Chazon. Since the whole Yerida, the descent, and the Churban, the complete destruction, is only because and in order to bring to the third Beis HaMikdash, therefore the Maila of the Chidush in the Beis HaMikdash is only when there's first a Churban, and that Churban becomes part of the new building. And this is most emphasized on Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. Why on Shabbos? Why not on Tisha B'Av itself? The answer is because the whole idea of Shabbos is the bittul of kamos, of quantity and chitzonius and the external, to quality and pnimius, the internal. On Shabbos, the quantity and the external creation becomes nullified to the tachlis of creation, which is Vayechulu Hashemayim va'aretz v'chol tzavam, that Hashem is the creator. Hashem rested on the seventh day, and by resting on Shabbos, there is the bittul of that entire multifarious, diverse creation to the pnimius. That's the whole idea of Shabbos. And that's why specifically on Shabbos, what is emphasized is that the Churban, which is the Chitzonius, is bottled to the Pnimius, which is the beginning of the new Beis HaMikdash. And that's why you see the vision of the Beis HaMikdash this coming Shabbos, and it's transformed from Puranusa, to a situation of punishment, to Isperiu Kol Nehirin, to the revelation of highest of lights. And now we understand that through the hefsek, through the intermission, there is an aliyah, an elevation of the highest order. Godel yeh kavod habayis hazeh. It says in a pasuk that the glory of the second Beis HaMikdash was greater than the first Beis HaMikdash. It was greater in height, in physical height, and also in years. The first Beis HaMikdash stood for 410 years, the second Beis HaMikdash 420 years. The Zohar says that pasuk is actually a reference to the Bayis HaShlishi, that the third Beis HaMikdash will be greater than even the first and the second. The reason being that the first and second Beis HaMikdash were created by man, whereas the third Beis HaMikdash is Mikdash Hashem Keinu Yodecha, will be created by Hashem. It will come down Milamayla, and therefore it will be a binyan nitzchi, an everlasting binyan. And this is merumas in the word kosis lamoir. Kosis is chav, saf, yud, saf. Chav, saf is begematria 420. Yud, saf is begematria 410, which is a remez on the two Batei Mikdash. Kosis, they were crushed, but the purpose was lamoir, to bring to the very essence. In other words, the first and the second Beis HaMikdash, in an expression of Chassidus, were Giluyim, was Oyer. And through the Churban, which is a Cheshech Kafel Umechubel, a double darkness, and the darkness of Golus, we reach to the Mo'er, to the luminary itself, to the very essence of Hashem in the third Beis HaMikdash. As we know that the first Beis HaMikdash was Aham Shachem Elamayla, drawn from above, and represented the paradigm of Avram, Chesed. The second Beis HaMikdash was an aliyah from below, and the paradigm was Yitzchak, Gevurah. And that means that what was revealed in the first Beis HaMikdash was the Maila, the advantage of Avodah Milamayla Lamata, from above. What was revealed in the second Beis HaMikdash was the advantage of Avodah Milamata Lamayla, from below. And in the third Beis HaMikdash, we have the fusion of Chesed and Gvura, which is Tiferes, which goes up till Keser, which is the fusion through the power of Atzmos, hence creating a Bayis Nitzchi, an everlasting binyan. The Heirah, the lesson of all the above, is as follows. As we come to Tisha B'Av, we shouldn't chas v'shalom fall in our spirit and be dejected. But we need to know that the destruction is part of the building and the rebuilding of the future Beis HaMikdash. And it's the same in each person's avodah. A person in their private life should not fall in spirit when they see a descent or when they see an interruption in their avodah, starting from sleep itself. Rather, it's the beginning of a new day. And adrabah, the whole point of the Yerida is to have the novelty, the chidush that comes afterwards, and that arouses a person that they should serve Hashem in a novel, a new way, starting from Torah, learning Torah, nigla and nista, every single day, learning something new in Torah and bringing out new concepts in Torah, which itself speedens the Torah Chadosha Mi'iti Teiseh, the new Torah which Mashiach will reveal. Especially, we should make siyumim in these 9 days, and also especially siyumim and Maseches Tamid, which through the limud habinyan, learning about the Beis Hamikdash, that itself causes malani alechem ki'ilu atem asukim bebinyan, and that through learning about the Beis Hamikdash, as if you are engaged in the binyan Beis Hamikdash. V'hi rotzen, that through the hachlotes tovus will bring down the Beis Hamikdash from above, v'sachazena einenu, and especially after all the tefillas of Klal Yisrael, tefillas shaloi be'erach, even more than the tefillas of Eschanan, Tov, Kuf, Tes, Vav, tefillas of Moshe Rabbeinu, for sure, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will answer and respond to our tefillas. And especially, in addition to the tefillas, there's the psak din of Rabbonim Meira Hira, that the Geula needs to come, which is in addition to the Pesach din of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Kolu Kol HaKitzin, and La'alta L'Teshuva, and La'alta L'Geula, and now the entire Avodah has come to a close, and what is now is dependent in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And from the Pesach din of the Rabbonim will come the fulfillment of our Shiva, Sheftayach Kvarishena, that in Tiberia, the Sanhedrin will reconvene, and from then it will come to the Beis Hamikdash. Tzion, B'mishpat Tipade, Tzion will be redeemed with Mishpat, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Likutei Torah. That is a reference to Hilchas HaKadmeisa, as the Targum Unkla says. That's a reference to Limud HaTorah, V'shaveha B'tzedakah. And instead of the tzedakah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did with Klal Yisrael, shepisron lebeinu umas, that he scattered them amongst the nations, he will do the tzedakah of atam tzluktu le'echad echad, gathering each yid b'noreinu, b'vaneinu, b'vneseinu, b'skenenu, all the yidden together, akol godel yoshuvu heina, to the Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi, and to the Kodesh HaKadoshim.